good afternoon, YouTube. Welcome back once again to Fat Cat Collections. Today I get another great Aiyima product. So if you're not familiar with Aiyima, they make they're a Chinese company, obviously like most things out there, right? But they make kind of like really affordable, awesome home audio solutions. So let's face it. Let's talk about this right off the bat. If you are coming to this channel and you found this based on this review, right, and you're looking to add audio to your home, with the products that they have out there nowadays, these what we'll say is off-branded products, and I mean off-branded by they're not Sony, Kenwood, Pioneer, right, or Harman Kardon, and those big names you're gonna get. If you're looking to add music to your home and you want something that sounds great, I don't mean good, I mean great. Like check out the other YouTubers out there who've talked about Aiyima. I just reviewed one of their tube amplifiers they sent me, a hybrid tube amp. Friggin' fantastic. I cannot explain to you how it is opened up. It's like I got new speakers, right? And I'm no stranger when it comes to audio, right? I mean, I got audio in every single room of this house. Every time you turn around, I'm getting some other new audio item, whether that's headphones, amplifiers, home theater, whatever it is. Car audio, like I got a lot of experience with this stuff, and I can tell you that this company is fantastic. The stuff coming out nowadays, the technology and how we're basically combining with a lot of these, kind of their claim to fame is these hybrid tube amps. They're basically using tubes to basically use as a preamp with a standard modern day amplifier, and that gives you a warmth of sound that normally you'd have to pay $1,000 for. Now sound is subjective. Again, everybody's gonna hear something different. Your speakers play a huge role in that. And there is a little bit of like this idea I think audiophiles have where they, just like when we talk about watches where it's like, oh, well, this Rolex just is way better than this Invicta. And they, a lot of times they're, I'm not saying there aren't subtle differences, but even like, let's just put Rolex aside. Let's say, a couple $1,000 watch. They have to, like, in their mind, there has to be something better because of the price difference. So when you take a $150 hybrid tube amplifier, compare it to a $3,000 I don't know, really, audiophile brand amplifier, a lot of audiophiles really can't admit, their mind just doesn't, it's not like they're even doing it on purpose. They just can't admit that one sounds better than another, right? They'll always gravitate towards the expensive one because it just has to. Their brains can't, like, compute that, right? And they, even if they try to, they still can't. It's subconsciously going on in their mind where they're automatically going to choose that. But if you did a double blind study and you actually tested it, I think you'd find that there would be opinions all over the board. I'm sure some would say, oh man, this $3,000 amplifier sounds better. Others would say, oh, the $150 one does. You'd get basically I don't think there'd be any consistency in the sound quality, right? Because sound is subjective. Now, Aiyima, again, if you haven't got this already, I love the company, right? Pretty awesome. So I reached out again, and they were like, they said, yeah, we'd love to collaborate again. So they sent me, this is something I've been wanting for a long time. So this is not a tube amplifier, but this is a mini stereo amplifier. And what this is basically a sub amplifier. So if you are audio guys, and you've dealt or you've had some experience like building car audio systems, you know the difference in building your own speaker box, right? Doesn't matter. You can buy a lot of prefab stuff that's still good, right? But in my experience, there's nothing like me building one. I can tune it deep. I can tune it the way I want. And this isn't rocket science. There is physics and a lot to know behind audio, but ultimately banging the trunk apart, it doesn't have to be as complex as they make it. All real audiophiles, when you start really tuning a car to like competition grade, that might mean something, right? That might, if you have a way of testing the way that a vehicle will produce sound. But again, at the end of the day, I just don't see how you can really call one a winner when sound is so subjective, right? Well, everybody's going to have a different opinion on what sounds good. And for me, I keep it real simple. I just want it to sound good. So, but with that being said, a lot of home audio subwoofers are extremely expensive. If you want to get, like, sure, the $150 special, it'll get you bass. I have a lot of those. It works for my needs, right? But I've always wanted to build my own home subwoofer. And the problem with a lot of home subwoofers is that if you want to get like a rack-mounted amplifier, there's not a lot of choices that are affordable. So with this, you're looking at 80 bucks. So $80 gets you a sub amplifier for your home, and this will allow you to use things like car audio subs for home audio, right? So let's just take a look here. I don't want to ramble on too much. You can see I'm pretty excited about this, but one thing I'll state, the power supply is enormous. So depending on where you're putting this, I mean, this could definitely, you know, it's kind of interesting, like the amplifier is so small, but the power supply is enormous. And I understand why that has to be, but it is massive, so just kind of keep that in mind. I don't want to say it's a negative, but it is really huge if you're going to be mounting this somewhere. You know, sometimes if you're going to get like build your own home sub, you might buy one of the actual like plate amplifiers. But when you start getting into something that has something like this, has 200 watts of power, if you're going to get a plate amplifier, that kicks the price up quite a bit. You might pay about $300 for a plate amplifier. And if you're not familiar with a plate amplifier, basically you build your sub, you can either build a partition in the sub for that plate amplifier. A lot of guys just cut a hole and mount the amplifier, right? Not the best way of doing it, but this is all you need. Now, you do have to mount this somewhere, so this might go next to your audio components and tuck that giant power supply away and then run your signal cable. You might put this on top of the sub. I think I would, when I use this, I'm going to put it next to the amplifier. Maybe you could put their tube amplifier right on top of it. And what I intend on doing is, if you're a car audio guy like me, you have stuff laying around. So I'm not really sure if I'm going to build so when I said I know what I'm doing, I'm not really sure if I'm going to build. I have an extra Alpine Type S10 that a car audio sub that I might build a home audio box for it, tuned to 32 hertz, 30 hertz. Might even go down to about 28, or I might do something with a couple 8s I have laying around. So we will see. But you get everything you need here. And what's cool about this is that if you are a guy who likes to tinker and likes to experiment building different boxes, you can buy one of these amplifiers for your home sub amp, and then you're not locked into mounting this inside of a box. You can just really kind of get creative and kind of play around with it. You can pull the car sub out of your car and throw it in your living room, right? If you want to go super ghetto. I mean, pretty cool. So what they've done with this too, you have an adjustability on the power supply. You have 24 to 48 volts, and I believe if the larger power supply, you're going to get more power out of that, but we might be topped out at 200 watts. We do have a left and right, or excuse me, mono output with plus and negative polarities. We have the audio in, really straightforward, you know, left and right, and then sub out. And you might be saying, why do you have sub out? So what's cool about this, this actually allows you to do a couple different hookups. So let's say you already have a home amplifier. This allows you to basically run the input of your, if you're using a mono input, you'll have to get like a little splitter, like a 2-into-1, or sorry, a 1-into-2. But let's say you're running like monitor out, like your output of your of a receiver, or let's just say you have, for argument's sake, let's say you're using one of the, trying to think of a scenario here where how you might hook this up. If you were running just a standard, yeah, or let's say they're Aiyima tube amplifier and you want to add a sub to that, right? So you can basically run the subwoofer out, split it into here, right? And you'll use basically a single in to dual male, so single female, dual male. You could probably just run one in. I don't recommend it, but you want to get maximum signal, so go ahead and split it right into here. And then let's say you have an extra sub. Let's say you're a bass head and you want to have even more bass. You can still run the subwoofer out on this into your standard subwoofer. So that's kind of cool, right? So it allows you to be able to do that. What else? They do show this here as passive speakers running into this, which doesn't make any sense, because if you do run, let's say you can run a pair of speakers in this, you're not going to have stereo. This is going to be mono. So I don't recommend, if you want an amplifier to run, you know, a couple speakers, I don't recommend this one, because this isn't really for this. This is really for sub. So it is kind of surprising that they have that listed, but you know, nonetheless, you could run this in mono if you have a situation like you have in-ceiling speakers or something like that. You're trying to run a couple throughout the house. You could use that scenario on this. Let's talk about the specifications. So something to be noted here, the output on this is dependent on your impedance. So it's kind of acting like a car amplifier. Now, any home amplifier will operate at different impedances, but some are stable, some are not. Most home theater amplifiers are stable to 8 ohms. So when you buy speakers, most are going to be 8 ohm. I have noticed in the last couple of years, you see more 4 ohm home speakers coming out. So they are kind of bringing some of that car audio stuff into home audio. Not stating that there hasn't been 4 ohm, speakers already years ago, but generally the stuff you go into Best Buy without spending thousands and thousands upon thousands of dollars getting audio grade gear, generally it's 8 ohm, right? But with this, you get the ability to run 2 ohm load, 4 ohm load, or 8 ohm load. So if you want to run a 2 ohm load, you'll get the 200 watts. So if you want to run a 4 ohm, it puts out 150 RMS, and 8 ohm will get you 120. So it acts different than a car audio amp. Most car audio amps Again, not overgeneralizing. Most of them, when you drop your impedance by, you multiply your, divide your impedance by 2, you go from 8 ohm to 4 ohm, you lose half the power. Again, that depends on the amp. That's kind of the rule of thumb. With this, if you do want to maximize the output power, which I recommend if you're planning on building a home sub or you're going to do something like that, when you basically, for those who don't know, and I'm sure a lot of you do if you're watching this, but if you want to get the 2 ohms, you would basically run 2 4 ohm subwoofers, do a dual, or you can run a DVC subwoofer with dual voice coil, both 4 ohm impedance, run those plus to plus, negative to negative, and you will get a 2 ohm load on the amp. That's what I'm most likely going to do, whether I use 2 8s that are 4 ohm each, or I use one car audio sub that's a dual 4 ohm voice coil. I'll get a 2 ohm load on this, and that'll put out those 200 watts. Other great thing about this is that you have a the ability to select between subwoofer or standard speakers. So this is going to activate the crossover or turn it off. So in my case, I'm going to have it switch to sub, and then you have the EQ built in. So that's great. So most of the time you're not going to be playing with this. Generally for me, I set it between 80 and 100 hertz. There's guys who test and test the other speakers and get it to the exact frequency. I'm not too critical on that. If you think it needs a little more top end bass, you turn it up a little bit. You think you want to remove it, you turn it down a little bit. A lot of that will depend on the speakers you have hooked up to it. If you have speakers that are little 3-inch, 4-inch speakers, you're probably going to want to tune that up to maybe 100, because those speakers can't really produce those 100 notes all that well, right? So again, depends on your speakers, just play around with it. Then you have the big giant volume knob. Now hopefully what you can do with this is kind of set it in a position where you like the volume most of the time, and then as you turn up the audio on your standard amplifier, your normal amp, it'll hopefully attenuate the volume output coming into this, right? Or the signal output, or the signal coming into this, and then allow you to basically not have to play with this. But sometimes you want more bass. What I always found about a home subwoofer is generally you try to tuck them away in the corner, and sometimes you're like, this movie is really bassy. It's really loud. I want to turn it down. You got to reach behind the couch. Kind of annoying. With this, you just go up to your audio components and turn it up or down. Would have been nice to have a remote control for that, but they didn't, so that's okay. But pretty awesome. Again, haven't tested it yet, haven't put it through the ringer, but based on the experience that I have with some of the other products that Aiyima makes, I'm going to be happy with this. I absolutely love their products. So if you are, let's get to a couple of, let me try to upsell you a little bit. If you are going to, if you want a home theater system, this isn't the these aren't the amplifiers for you, right? These are basically stereo amplifiers at most things they sell. So if you have a situation where you don't have a home theater, you're not worried about center channel or rears, and let's say you listen to a lot of music. My folks are a perfect example where they mainly just listen to TV, and when they want like the tower speakers on, they do have an older Sony home theater receiver which is going out. For somebody like them, they're just looking for left and right. Listen to a little Fleetwood Mac, right? You just want left and right. You don't need all the other stuff. And again, it is subjective. You may love the surround sound, the echoes, and all that stuff. But for me, for my purposes, I'm always happy with a 2.1 system, left, right, subwoofer. And so something like this is going to be perfect, right? So I added to my 70-inch TV downstairs on the wall, I add the Aiyima tube amp. The reason I put it there, and I'm telling you this so you guys can kind of like. Sometimes we get in situations like the one that I'm in where I have a 70-inch TV on the wall and I don't want to have components everywhere. When I bought this place, I wired up an in-wall cabinet for all that stuff. So I have a 48 on the side of that with, the full 5.1 Dolby Digital. But for my purposes, for my enjoyment, I didn't want to clutter up the entire wall. A 70 takes up enough room. I didn't want to have a cabinet there. I didn't want to break into the wall and run, home theater. I just didn't need it. So I added a sound bar, courtesy of Vizio, Dolby Atmos sound bar. But that does kind of lack when I'm listening to something like Fleetwood Mac and I want to really crank it up and have kind of like that concert experience. So I added this little tiny, great looking tube amp. This is something I can mount right underneath that. It takes up minimal room. It doesn't look out of place. It does kind of look somewhat interesting to look at. Not necessarily this one. This is pretty basic. But you both throwing the tube amp on top of that, it looks very cool. And it doesn't take up a lot of room. When you're looking at it, you don't really think like, oh, you have all those audio components here, right? For you guys who got the wife nagging you or whatever, I hear that a lot. Oh, my wife won't let me get this stereo equipment, doesn't like this in the room. For you guys, this is very small footprint stuff, and you can really get a lot of audio into your room without like having being a visual eyesore. And again, that is subjective. Like everybody likes something different. But I would highly encourage you to check this out. Even if you're watching a movie, I'll do a review on my my 70-inch system that I got going on right now with that, with the soundbar and of course the hybrid tube amp by Aiyima. You know, I just played a little Fleetwood Mac this morning and it just sounds incredible. I mean, you don't really need much more than that, but everybody's different. Everybody's gonna, you know, again, you have to get what makes you happy, but I would definitely give this brand a go and definitely check it out. I definitely, if you're looking into getting a soundbar, I would encourage you, rather than spending $300-400 on like top of the line sound, shouldn't say top of the line, but a good sound bar. They work, but they definitely sacrifice when it comes to, I think, listening to more, getting more of that concert experience. They just don't have the left and right separation. I would encourage you to get some flat panel definitive audio. They're hard to find, but you can get some definitive technology speakers. Wall mount them. If you can get, you know, if you have room for some towers, great. But there is really no sacrifice for just a great sound and 2.1 system. Again, movies is different because you want the audio coming from the center. But if you're looking for something that just gives you that incredible like sound stage for concerts, look no further. Check out Aiyima. So if I can help you in any way, I tried to pack a lot of information into this 16-minute video. So forgive me if I missed something, but I am always here by email or by chat to help you. So should you have any questions, let me know. I'm at your disposal. So I want to thank Aiyima again for their generosity in sending out their audio components for me to test and review and enjoy. I look forward to reviewing. They have a couple other tube amps I'd like to get my hands on. We might have to add one to the bedroom. So stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching and have a great day.